radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning. I hope everybody's well out there at UCY.TV and on the radio. My name is Jerome, and I am the Sane Environmentalist. Today, I'm actually going to start out by, once again, plugging the FCC. Let's get a hold of the FCC, folks. Go FCCyourself.com. That is, go to a page called GoFCCyourself.com. You'll find a agenda. It's a little blue link. It's called Express. You need to click on that and make it known to the FCC that we are not going to tolerate them basically capitalizing on our free and open internet and turning it into a subscription service. So again, that's GoFCCyourself.com. So I got to thinking that every show, it's gloom and it's doom and it's bad news. And so today what I'm going to try to do, as best I can at least, is I'm going to try to focus on the good news. Is there any good news out there? And indeed, I managed to find some good news. Turns out that there is a whole bunch of nuclear plants in the United States Okay. Holy mackerel, please, God of the internet, be kind to me today. So, once again, Clinton Power Station in Clinton, Illinois. Status of this plant is it's at risk, and the problems include small selling into a tough market because people don't want it. They have one reactor with a generating capacity of 1,078 megawatts. The license expires in 2026, and it was issued in 1987. The company that owns it is the Exelon Group. Next on the list, we have Crystal River in Crystal River, Florida. This plant has been shut down, and it was announced in February 2013 that they were shutting down. Problems that they had there were engineering issues. Reactors 1, Unit 3 generating capacity was 883 megawatts. The license is expired in 2016 and will not be renewed. Their license was issued in 1976. And that was Duke Energy. Keep these issue dates in your heads as we go through here. Keep in mind that if the license was issued in 76, it was probably 78, 79 that they went into operation. So this plant has been operating since 1979. That is I think I was 15 or 16 in 1979. I was just a kid. So that's a long time to keep a nuclear plant open. Next, we have the Davis-Besse Nuclear Power Station in Oak Harbor, Ohio. Its problems are it's at risk, it needs a license renewal, and new steam generators. The steam generators are the thin, or the matrix of tubes that go through the heart of the reactor core, and basically they pump water through them, and the heat from the reactor core boils the water in the steam generator tubes and sends the steam out to the turbines. As we know with San Onofre, there's definite issues with those steam generator tubes. They have a tendency to get brittle and break and snap and crack, and then you get radioactive right from the reactor water into the secondary system, which is not supposed to ever have that and has no protections to prevent radiation from thereby getting into the atmosphere. This plant, the Davis-Besse, had cracks in the reactor shield structure. Now, when you get cracks in the shield, the reactor basically is you've got a big thermos-like container that has a reactor core, and then outside of that, then you have the shield structure, and then outside of that, then you have the containment. So if you get cracks in the shield structure, that means that radioactivity can get out of the reactor and into the primary outer containment vessel or area. And from there it could end up into the atmosphere if it's not an emergency and it's not locked down. The generating capacity of this plant was 900 megawatts. Their license is expiring this year, and they issued the license in 1977. And this is right on the edge of beautiful wetlands. Next, we have the Fort Calhoun station in Fort Calhoun, Nebraska. Status of this plant was that it was at risk. It has been down since April 2011. The problems were a long-term outage and operational violations, safety and reliability issues. They had one reactor with an operating capacity of 482 megawatts. Their license was due to expire in 2030 and was issued in 1973. Next, we have our favorite Indian Point. Excuse me. The Indian Point station is got 2 reactors, and they are looking for license extensions on them. And they're trying to use special provisioning to renew the licenses. But there's strong local opposition, obviously, to these 2 reactors, which are within 30 miles of Manhattan. And the capacity of these 2 reactors is 1,028 and 1,041 megawatts. Their license expired in 2013 and 2013 respectively. And the licenses were issued in 1973 and 1975. Entergy Corporation is the company that is managing and owns those. Indian Point is especially egregious because it is just a terrible, terrible plant. And the water intake kills millions of fish a year. You know, they basically grind this half the wildlife that comes down the Hudson River up to cool these two monstrosities. And they've had various issues with Indian Point over the years, and it will not reopen. It will end up closing. Next, we have the James A. Fitzpatrick Nuclear Plant in Scriba, New York. And the problems with this one are it's at risk because of the high cost, no power purchase contracts, and operational issues. We have 2 reactors there producing 838 megawatts. And their license was due to expire in 2034. And the license was issued in 1974. And it's another Entergy plant. Next, we have the Kewaunee Power Station in Carlton, Wisconsin. This one is shut down. And it shut down in May 2013. The closure was announced on October 2012. The problems are that it's not economic. Nobody wanted to buy the thing. The reactor generating capacity was 556 megawatts, and its license was issued in 1973. Next, we have the Millstone Power Station. That's in Waterford, Connecticut. Status is that it's at risk. Problems are water coolant issues. Might need cooling towers. It looks like it's located right on a pristine waterway, estuary of some sort. And I see no cooling towers. And so probably what's happening is they're heating up the wild water areas with their discharge water and creating, die-off in the area that they are having the plant in. And these things are just so ugly. They're big, giant, ugly, ugly things. You know, they totally mar the landscape. There's really, really nothing green about a nuclear power plant. You know, don't ever let anybody argue and tell you that a nuclear power plant produces green energy. It's the farthest thing from green. You know, not only the poisons they produce, but also the heat discharge of these reactors. You know, they need to discharge a huge amount of heat. And that's either a big cooling tower like 3 Mile Island, or they just use a waterway and discharge the heat right into the natural water systems, which heat up the natural water systems. And also they have to suck in millions of gallons from these water systems, which kill tons of wildlife. So next, let's see. 9 Mile Point Power Station in Scriba, New York. Status is that this is at risk. The problems are Unit 1 has old, small, high-cost operational issues. Has 2 reactors, Unit 1 and 2, and a generating capacity of 628 and 1,362 megawatts, respectively. Its license is due to expire in 2029 and 2046. And its license was issued in 1969 and 1987. Let's see, in 1969, and I'm 56, I was, 7 years old? That's amazing to me. And this company is called Constellation Energy Nuclear Group. Next, we have the Palisades Power Plant in Covert, Michigan. This one is at risk because of safety and reliability problems and local opposition. It has one reactor with a generating capacity of 798 megawatts. Its license is due to expire in 2031 and was issued in 1971. And this is yet another Entergy plant. Let's see here. Did it just get dropped or something? There. Okay. Next, we have the Pilgrim Station in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Quite a euphemism there. It has at-risk problems with it's tough selling into this smaller market. Has one reactor with a generating capacity of 688 megawatts. Its license is due to expire in 2032, and it was issued in 1972. Then we got the Regina Nuclear Power Plant in Ontario, New York. Status of this one is it's at risk because it's got small, tough economics around there. And it has one reactor with a generating capacity of 581 megawatts. Its license was due to expire in 2029 and was issued in 1969. And, of course, we have the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station near San Clemente, California. This one is shut down because of steam tube problems. And remember I was talking about the steam tube generators? Well, they had Fuji Heavy Industries, who used to make Subarus. You know, back in the days when Subarus were solid, tough cars, they made them. I remember one of the first cars I ever had was a Subaru. And what the good thing about the Subaru was that all the bearings were oversized. Everything was a heavy, because they made heavy equipment. And so they just used the same parts for the Subarus. And so back in the day when you were getting 70, 60, 50,000 miles off an engine on your typical American car, Chevy, Ford, Chrysler, these little Subarus would continue to plug along as long as you kept oil and water in them for 300, 400,000 miles. And the reason was because of all the bearings were bigger and tougher, and everything was tougher. They weren't as efficient as some of the other smaller cars, but boy, they lasted a long time. So I was surprised to hear that it was Fuji Heavy Industries that made the defective steam generator tubes for the San Onofre plant. And they took shortcuts. And the engineers, hold it, sneeze. Excuse me. The engineers at the plant, in order to propagate more energy out of the reactor cores, decided that they could remove this. It's a cushion that lives on the bottom of the reactor. It's like a cone-shaped thing, and all the steam tubes basically grow up around this cone. And the cone absorbs vibration and keeps the steam tubes from vibrating. If you ever lived in a house that has steam heat, you have been witness to when the heat comes on, hearing the radiators going pong, ping, pong. Well, that's basically what happens when you boil water inside of a closed thing. It makes pinging, bonging, ponging, and vibration. And this cone in the bottom of that reactor was there to basically absorb that vibration so the steam tubes didn't wiggle around and bang into each other. Because when they bang into each other, it weakens them, and then you can have a rupture. And so they removed this thing. And of course, the steam tubes ruptured. They banged together, and I guess it was scary to be even in the building with them. They were so loud when they were banging together, and it didn't take long before one ruptured, and you're talking super high pressure steam, which will cut right through the next tube or the tube around that, and then you have a cascading failure, and you have a huge amount of radioactivity entering into the secondary system, which is not supposed to have any radioactivity in it. And boom, all of a sudden you've got radioactive steam entering into non-radioactive systems and contaminating all the equipment downstream and everything downstream, and eventually it gets right into the environment, because once it leaves the containment, it's free. Containment is like a supermax prison for radiation. And once it gets out of containment, it's free. And it will go where it can. So basically, San Onofre shut down in 2013 because of the steam generator tubes. And it says here the problems are engineering errors, leak, costly repairs. There's 2 reactors. One was operating at 1,070 megawatts and the other at 1,080 megawatts. They will not be reopening. They will be dismantling both of these plants. Another issue with San Onofre Station is that there are dry casks right on the beach, pretty much, where they are storing the spent fuel. Once it gets cool enough in the spent fuel pools, they're putting it in this dry storage casks on the beach. And the dry storage casks I think they have a 20-year lifespan or expectancy. And some of them have already been down there for 17 or 18 years. So there's no way to inspect them. We've had Donna Gilmore on our show several times, and her website is saneonofresafety.com. And, I urge you to Google San Onofre Safety, and you can get to her site. And if you live around these plants, take action to try to make them use appropriate dry casks instead of these thin wall pieces of crap that they're wanting to use now to save some money after their giant engineering snafu. And the last one on my list is Vermont Yankee in Vernon, Vermont. I was surprised to learn that Vermont even had one nuclear power plant. I kind of grew up in Vermont as a kid, and it's such a beautiful state, So basically, this one was shut down in 2014. The problems were it was not economic and state opposition. So the people within Vermont were like, get your damn filthy nuclear plant out of our state. And it had a generating capacity of 620 megawatts. Vermont Yankee, not good. 4 companies have also announced nuclear plant closures, representing the first shutdowns in 15 years and an unprecedented single-year retrenchment for the U.S. nuclear industry. It's a renaissance in reverse. It's a report by Mark Cooper. He highlighted at least 10 nuclear plants that could be forced to close earlier than planned. Cooper is a senior fellow at the Vermont Law School's Institute for Energy and Environment. He drew his conclusions in part from reports by Wall Street analysts. He stopped short of predicting specific plant closures, but he noted that there are about 10 that are at greater risk of closure because of low power prices, rising costs, and other woes. So, there you go, folks. There is a renaissance in reverse in the nuclear power industry. They're not economical anymore. They're very expensive to operate. They're very expensive to license. They're very expensive to fuel. And you have an ongoing waste issue wherein the operators of these plants need to figure out a way to store the waste on site, since there is no repository. There is no place to put them. And what are you going to do with fuel bundles that are filthy deadly for 10,000, 20, 30,000 years? I know that plutonium, and those bundles are loaded with it, has a half-life of 200 or 24,000 years. And you got to, when you're looking at half-life, multiply it by 10 before there's pretty much an undetectable amount. So that's 250,000 years that they're going to have to be safely stored. And we don't possess any kind of technology whatsoever to be able to allow us to deal with that. So it's like that, the logic of it is finally starting to sink into the minds of your typical people, especially with the advent of Fukushima. I think Fukushima, though it is absolutely horrible, was kind of needed to teach the world just how seriously deadly these things are, and just how easy it is for them to blow up and become a nightmare. And then once that happens, just how hard it is to do anything about it. They still can't even get into the building where Unit 1 is in Fukushima. They can't even. So, so what do? We need the power. We want to be quote unquote green. We need the energy as humans. So if we're not going to use nuclear, well, what exactly can we do? And I think one answer is microgrids. And in Japan, this is a big thing. It's surging up in Japan. There's a renaissance of microgrids wherein people in a prefecture there all get together, pool their money to buy solar panels for everybody's home, wind power, any kind of renewable you don't have to burn anything or split any atoms to make it power. And they're all putting solar panels on the roofs, and they got little wind farms going, and battery technology is coming along now that is allowing them to store. We got the Tesla Powerwall. If you have a home and you have, let's say, your typical American home, we'll call it a 4-bedroom house. If you have I think that was somebody trying to call me. My apologies. But if you have an array of panels on the roof, let's say about the size of your typical American home, probably you could have like a 20 by 30 foot section of solar panels on the home, and then another 10 by 10 for hot water. And unless you were in Alaska or Oregon or something, and now we're getting better, because we're getting better solar that will still generate electricity even under cloudy skies. You have that with a solar wall with a battery bank and some sort of stone heat absorbing thing for your hot water. You could literally power your entire home and on all of your needs off of that right there. You would not have to be connected to the grid with the exception of internet or telephone or television. I mean, the only wire we'd have to have going to our house would be our internet connection. And that's not such a bad thing, you know. So, we all need to get behind, and if you're an investor, invest in these industries. You know, that's how they grow. That's how they become economically viable, is by people actually spending the money and investing in them. And this is a real thing. And you combine solar panels and heat absorbing panels for producing water. And in some cases, let's say in my state, where I'm living right now in Arizona, you know, you could heat enough water and have rocks get hot enough during the day to where you could, on the cooler months, you could heat the house at night with that, you know. You could literally heat the house at night with solar electricity, with solar heat that is salvaged from during the day. So this microgrid technology is the way to go. And you can find that also with high efficiency light bulbs. LED light bulbs use 1/10 of the electricity of a regular light bulb. A 65 watt equivalent LED bulb actually uses 6 watts of electricity to produce the same amount of electricity of light as a 65 watt bulb. So we have the technology now to move away from the grid. And I think that is the big thing. You know, the grid is the thing that is creating much of the pollution that we are experiencing on our planet. The big coal-fired plants, the big nuclear plants, even natural gas plants are pumping tons of CO2 into the air. So that is the solution. The solution is the microgrid. We need to pull together and co-invest, create microgrids, and get ourselves away from this big, giant megalopoly of the power companies and their control over us using this microgrid technology. It is here. It is now. A lot of it is still cutting edge. But I'm going to read a bit from an article from microgridknowledge.com talking about microgrids in Japan. Political and grassroots public support for a resilient, non-nuclear, and fossil-free future is gaining traction and spurring development of new microgrids in Japan. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's government, Liberal Democratic Party, is advancing efforts to invest greater sums to develop smart villages, towns, and cities with interconnected low and zero carbon microgrids to produce energy. The National Resilience Program is deeply institutionalized. Bricko University professor of political and economy Andrew DeWitt told Microgrid Knowledge, adding that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's government seeks to spend $41 billion on the new resiliency projects in 2018. One such development comes in the form of a partnership between Panahome NRA's leasing and government of Hygro Prefecture. The project partners unveiled a plan on September 21st that calls for installing and integrating 117 home solar photovoltaic battery energy storage systems to form a community microgrid in the new area of Ashiya City, known as Smart City. I wish I could pronounce half of these words. Shio, Shia, Solar, Shima, Panasonic, Tesla's lithium-ion battery Gigafactory partner is supplying the residential battery energy storage systems. Smart cities numbers among the growing roster of microgrid and distributed energy smart city projects at the vanguard of the governing Liberal Democratic Party's energy resilience program. Rising on land reclaimed from the sea, Foundation landfill, the city will be starting point for Japan's first interconnected microgrid system. According to project partners, the project's state goal is to create a town interconnected by energy for living. Project plans entail expanding the initial 127 solar smart homes. Let me blow this up a little bit. It's kind of hard to read. There we go. They're going to expand the initial 117 smart home solar storage microgrids by building out a regional energy distribution management system beginning in October. Japan's powerful Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry selected the project as part of a subsidy program to promote local energy production for local consumption by leveraging regional characteristics. So what we have here in Japan is we have the government actually getting involved in this. You know, the government is funding these microgrid cities and towns, wherein everybody pitches in. They have one centralized battery storage system, and everybody's various power goes to this microgrid. And if you aren't part of the microgrid, then you're still hooked in, but you're having to pay a bill to the co-op, I guess you could call it. And what's amazing to me is that the corporations, aside from selling you the parts to build the thing, are not going to make any money. You know, and that will probably be a problem in the United States because, you know, imagine what Entergy would do if it's like, well, hold it. Now, if we do this microgrid, that means we will basically be going out of business. All of our power plants will have to be shut down. Coal power plants, oil plants, natural gas plants, nuclear plants, all have to be shut down. You know, they're short-sighted enough to go, well, then we're just going to be out of business instead of going, okay, then we need to go into building and battery packs, and we need to go into building solar panels, you know, and wind turbines. We need a shift in our energy infrastructure. And Japan is leading the way on this. You know, it's kind of amazing that Japan, the country who is basically experiencing the worst of the worst as far as nuclear disaster, is the country that would be leading the way. So this is expected to become a national model for smart city, town, and village microgrid technologies and systems, as well as a showcase for made-in-Japan projects overseas. According to project partners, 80% or more of the smart housing district's energy will be generated by residential and commercial solar photovoltaic systems and stored and dispatched according to residential, community, and eventually broader regional power grid needs and conditions. And another interesting thing about this is that we could switch to DC for much of our energy needs. If you had a microgrid wherein you're not having to transmit electricity hundreds of miles, you could keep the whole thing with direct current. Direct current does not produce electromagnetic waves because it is direct current. You know, alternating current goes from 0 to plus to 0 to minus, etc. And what that does is it produces electromagnetic waves, which emerge from anything. It's called a field, Transistors work on it, and a field effect. The old radio tubes used to operate on that. If you just send a voltage through a wire, while the voltage is either raising or dropping, it'll emit an electromagnetic field. That's what the whole idea behind a transformer is. Basically, you send a voltage through a coil of wire, and a coil of wire adjacent to that will pick up that voltage and either pick it up, step it up, or step it down, or keep it the same, either way. So with DC, you don't have that issue. It's either on or it's off. There's one quick burst of electromagnetism when it goes on or off, but that's it. It's not a continuous 60 times a second thing, which is what we're dealing with now. And I have to wonder how much that affects us as people, how much the 60 times a second onslaught of electromagnetic waves you get anywhere you are in the United States, unless you're up in the mountains or somewhere far away. Like if you go up in the mountains or out in the desert, I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but you get this sense of peacefulness that just descends over your whole being. And I think that part of that sense of peacefulness is that you're not constantly being bombarded by electromagnetic waves. So, that's something to be thought about right there. Alrighty. So, the ripple effects of the Great Eastern Japan earthquake. So Japan's push for resilience stems from the 2011 earthquake and tsunami that left Tokyo Electric Power's nuclear plant in Fukushima a radioactive ruin. And breaking from its long-standing resilience on nuclear energy and imported fossil fuels, Japan instituted a generous solar feed-in tariff and other renewable energy incentive programs, and a boom in project investment ensued. 6 years later, these programs have largely run their courses. Focusing has now shifted to making use of solar, with wind, hydro, marine, and waste in the context of resilient urban, suburban, and rural development. Underpinning this has been the sharp decline in the cost of advanced lithium-ion battery storage systems, along with the coincident improvements in performance. Japan is home to some of the world's leading solar photovoltaic lithium-ion battery storage manufacturers and internet companies, such as Hitachi, Kyocera, Panasonic, and NTT. In addition, leading members of Prime Minister Abe's government and the LDP have taken up the distributed energy banner. Kashiwagi Tokyo and his cohort are the leaders pushing for coordinated industrial policy. He said, Kashiwagi is the energy environment czar, specifically asked by the Prime Minister of the Society 5.0 program, which builds on Germany's Industry 4.0 distributed renewable energy strategy and takes it society-wide. A professor at the International Research for Advanced Energy Systems for Sustainability at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. He also leads the government's new Energy Promotion Council, and the council has paid out more than $898 million in subsidies from the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry for smart energy communities. So this is the key, folks. This is the key, and it's earthquake, typhoon, storm proof as well. Keep in mind that if you have a microgrid, if every house basically is able to generate its own electricity and then send surplus to a central storage place, let earthquakes happen. Let tsunamis happen. If it doesn't destroy the whole house, you've got a battery on the wall of your house which will power you. So what if the local power plant, if there is even one there, goes down? Think about a world where we don't have coal-fired nuclear or any kind of giant power plants or the wires that are associated with those plants, where every home generates its own electricity. 20 years ago, that was a dream. That was not even beginning to be possible. But pretty much every structure has enough space on its roof to put solar cells enough up there to power whatever lights, radio, TV, etc. that you have going on inside the house. And this will just spur more innovation in battery technology, more innovation in smart appliances and power-saving light bulbs and power-saving appliances, solar heat, figuring out ways to store heat. You could use salt or stones. I know they use stones a lot. You just have something 4 times the size of a regular house water heater, full of gravel, and you pump hot water through it all day, and those stones get hotter and hotter and hotter, and they'll hold the heat for a long time, and then you can just use that hot water to heat the house with, and to cook with, and to bathe with. There is ways. So this is the good news. The good news is that we now have the technology to do this. And as well, the good news is that, thank God, Japan, and it sounds like Germany as well, are leading the way. They're leading the way in this whole battle that we have going on behind our nuclear and other non-green energy systems. So, more power to the more power to the Japanese for doing everything that they're doing. And so I was looking, and there's a company called Solar Professional, which is deploying the solar storage batteries, which are pretty damn amazing. They're DC converters for utility scale solar plus storage. Solar Pro is the name of them. Dynapower is the company that builds the batteries. And they're out of Burlington, Vermont. And they're the world leader in energy storage inverters and converters. And they have announced the first deployments of their patent-pending DPS 250 DC converter in utility-scale solar plus storage programs in the southeastern United States. Their 250 DPS 250 system is able to store up to 250 kilowatts of electricity, I believe. So they're able to store, convert, and move around a quarter of a megawatt of electricity. So 250,000 watts. Figure your typical smart home. Okay, not your 1960s 100-watt light bulb in every room plus another 75-watt light bulb in every lamp. But your typical smart home is going to use probably one of the most expensive appliances is going to be your TV, or your computer. There's a lot of computers that draw 300-400 watts out of the wall now. So, your most expensive, your typical house, smart house, might use up 1.5 kilowatts on the outside. Okay. So if you got a 250 kilowatt battery right down the hill, and you and 10 of your neighbors are all have solar panels on your roof, and you're all feeding into this battery during the day, plus enough to power your home, then at night that battery can provide electricity to everybody's house in the neighborhood. So that's what the microgrid concept is. The concept of the microgrid is that what we're going to do is make our energy small and expandable and easily workable. There will not be a need for big utility companies. The people who will make money off of it are the people who are smart enough and smart enough, we'll just say smart enough to get in the manufacturing of smart light bulbs and smart houses and smart everything, which are all low power, high efficiency items. The LED light bulb, brilliant. I don't even know why they still sell standard incandescent or even fluorescent light bulbs. Now they have LED light strips for fluorescent fixtures that you can plug right in. There's alternatives to the high power consuming 7,500 watt strips of light that we use over our heads. Most people don't realize that a standard 4-foot fluorescent tube uses between 30 and 40 watts of electricity. And if your office has 12 fixtures with 4 tubes each, 12 times 4, that's 48, let's call it 50 fixtures by 40 watts a piece. Or 50 tubes by 40 watts a piece, that's 2 kilowatts of energy just for that one room. Whereas you could do the same thing with 200 watts if it was all LED technology. And you could tailor the color of the light, to make it more efficient, more better for working, or better for our brains, And as well, you could run the whole thing on direct current, so you wouldn't have that constantly that we all are surrounded by, that most of us don't even notice. But there are a growing number of people who are highly sensitive to this 60 cycles per second hum, which permeates our entire society. We don't even realize it's there. But if anywhere you are, stop, get quiet for a minute, and listen. And listen for that 60 cycle a second hum, and you will hear it coming off of some appliance, some bulb, some device within your zone. You'll hear it. And another thing that would be good about microgrid is it would get away from using smart meters. And smart meters are, I'm beginning to understand, really pretty evil, because they put out a half a watt of microwave energy each. So that's like a half a watt microwave oven right outside your house, just blasting in all directions. So they do sell Faraday cages for microwaves. So I recommend everybody get a Faraday cage and put it around your microwave or your smart meters in your home. Because the Faraday cage will still allow enough out so your power company can read the meter, but it's, I guess they initially designed and built them so that they're like, well, hell, we could read every meter in town from one central location, not even considering what the health effects of microwaves are on people around them. You know, pretty terrible. So basically, this has been a good news show. You know, today we're talking about solutions. We're not talking about the problems. We're talking about solutions. And again, and this is another solution, we need to stop the FCC, and this is happening next Wednesday, by the way. They're going to vote on this on the 14th. And it's called filing number 17-108. And what they're trying to do is end net neutrality. And by ending net neutrality, they get to basically tailor the internet to whatever they want it to be. You know, if they don't like a site, they can block it or make people pay money to get to it. Imagine having to pay a YouTube subscription or a Facebook subscription. It's like, well, okay, yep, we offer a basic package which gives you some sites, but if you want social media and video streaming like Netflix or YouTube, well, then you're going to have to pay for the next step up package. So you get your basic, and then we're going to add in Netflix and social media, and that'll be another $19.95 a month. Oh, you want internet? I mean, you want email? Well, email is only $2 a month for email. And let's see what else we got here. Oh, voice over IP calling. Sorry, you can't do that anymore. We offer phone service, so you can use our phone service. You see where this is going? This is where it's going. You know, it'll get to the point where the corporations basically turn the internet into what cable TV is now. You know, if you want to have to pay for individual packages and then not be able to trust the content that you are getting, go ahead and let them have their way with us here. If you want to try to do something about it, go to gofccyourself.com. That is a URL that I forget his name, but one of these comedians, John Oliver and his crew created that so that people could easily get through all the crap pages that are there, that are between you and being able to express yourself, because the FCC decided to make it very hard this time. You've got to go through like 4 different links to get to this page. So you go to gofccyourself.com. It'll take you to a proceedings page. You will see 17-108, Restoring Internet Freedom. To the right of that, it'll say New Filing, and it will say Express. You need to click on the link that says Express. And then you can make your comments. You know, they require name, email, address. Well, thank you very much. I hope everybody has a good day, and peace out.